Welcome. Welcome, everyone. It's Angela Robles. And it's been a busy week, this first week back from many weeks of travel, including just coming back, as I think some of you know, from in and around the Milken Conference in LA. And among the incredible people that I met in LA, I bring forth to you today. So, in terms of giving a little bit of context to everyone, I've been in much travel. And as you know, I'm interested in anything and everything dynastic families, entrepreneurship, structures, have a little fascination with the legal aspects of not only everything going on, but from a perspective of a family office. And you all know, of course, although I don't want it to touch everything that I do, but the reality is it kind of is. It's eating everything the way that Andreessen said 10 years ago that software is eating the world. He's going to have to adapt that now to AI. So we have a very special guest with us today, and he was such a gracious host to me, which I greatly appreciate. Really, my first full day in LA, which was a Sunday, we hosted a wonderful event at this gentleman's home, which was more of a social soiree where I did give some commentary, a little bit of macro, a little bit of AI, and certain investments that I've been actively looking at or directly allocating to. And then we had a chance to catch up during the week in and around greater LA, including some other programs I was hosting, and was floored by his experiences, his knowledge, his capability in so many different ways. A couple of days ago, I said, Adam, you simply have to come on. So henceforth, everyone, I'd like to introduce you to Adam Berns. Adam, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. That was a very generous introduction. Thank you.
Oh, it wasn't kind enough. So in terms of what we're going to cover today, and a lot of it will be free flowing, and we always encourage audience interaction, I would probably define it as a next gen, not only family member, but family office. We're going to talk about AI, about media, about legacy, and entrepreneurship. We got a lot to cover with Adam. So to give you all a little bit of context, Adam has been an incredibly successful attorney at a very prominent organization, a dynastic family member, an investor, an entrepreneur over and over again, and someone who has seamlessly, even though both of us, no offense to me mentioning this, Adam, we're not young anymore per se, but we're young at heart. But over the age of 50, really both of us immersed ourselves into something like AI and realizing how, again, it's eating the world and impacting everything. So, Adam, on that note, and I will be, my audience knows, probably among my 5 or 6 key topics I'll be discussing with you. I do look forward to probably bouncing around a lot just to keep it a little bit fresh. Why don't I start with your, and I've written about this, you're unique as a generational wealth holder, but also realizing wealth often needs to be recreated. How do you balance preserving your family's history and legacy, also with pursuing, as you've done for decades, innovation and what some would deem sometimes high risk investments or entrepreneurial opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've always been somewhat involved with our family stuff. I really came in on a more full-time basis about 8 or 9 years ago. So I kind of, at first kind of wanted to show my own roots. Started as a lawyer at Latham and Watkins, did that for a few years, have a law degree and an MBA too. So my long-term goal was never to be a lawyer, although it's a great background. Then I got involved in starting several tech, entertainment, media ventures, which was pretty fun. Was always somewhat involved with our family real estate. So our family office is, very focused on real estate. My grandfather, started investing in real estate over 50 years ago. But you can't just, especially when you have a lot of family members and then they have kids and everything else, you can't just sit there and rely on what was. You want to constantly keep reinventing things. And I think, part of the thing that I tried to do, and 2 of my brothers are now involved in the business now, is really updating a lot of the procedures and processes. I mean, we had everything basically my dad was like hand doing cans and things like that. I mean, just, there was a lot of updating that really needed to happen. And the sort of next generation of those updates we're just in the process of doing now, which is bringing, as you said, AI into the fold, because I believe it's the most transformative technology I've seen in my lifetime. And I was there during a lot of early stuff. I grew up in Silicon Valley. I went to Stanford undergraduate. And I was probably one of the very first people in the entire country. I don't know whether I told you this story, to own a home computer, which is actually sort of a fascinating little story. I went to high school in San Jose. I went to a private Jesuit high school. And believe it or not, in 1975-76, my freshman year in high school, we had a computer club where we had a teletype terminal with paper. And I was very good in math. So I got out of my math class and I was learning how to program in BASIC with a teletype terminal. The guy that was a senior at my high school, named Randy Wigington, was working for a couple of guys. And he told me, about being able to buy a board, and if I built the power supply and the case and everything, I could have a home computer that I could hook up to my television. So I convinced my dad to purchase this since it was educational. My mom drove me over there. I was 13. There were 10 people working at the whole company. And this guy that was at my high school was writing their software. He was a senior in high school. So the two guys end up giving me this pitch. I go home, hook it up to the television. It doesn't do anything unless you literally write code. And you would save stuff with a cassette tape. And I go and I tell my dad, this is one of those missed opportunities, right? I said, Dad, I know these guys are raising money. You should put some money in this. And my dad's last words on this to me were, Adam, a company will never make it with a name like Apple. The two guys who sold me the computer were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. It was the 6th Apple II ever sold. So I can say, without too much hesitation, I was probably one of the first people in the country to actually own a personal computer. So,
oh my God, you're not kidding. And Adam, you might have missed out, but it's never too late on that Centa billionaire opportunity there. Wow, that's a great story.
No, it's a crazy, crazy story. So I've always loved tech, as you and I were chatting about, back in 2005 to 2006. And again, this was another missed opportunity, unfortunately, in the tech area. I was a co-founder of a company called Neural ID. And it was a visual pattern recognition company using neural nets. Well, what are neural nets? AI. So I was actually doing AI stuff 20 years ago. Unfortunately, we sold that too early also, and I don't have any interest in it still, but it actually had some really great underlying patents in the visual pattern recognition area, and it was doing stuff that nobody could do at that point in time. We were again a little bit too early.
Wow. I had someone speak. He probably doesn't want me to mention his name. What is it in the water of California? He's in greater LA as well. And he had the opportunity, maybe my year's a little off, it might have been 99. Some entrepreneurs came to him relative to a search engine. He's like, oh God, does the world need an other Alta Vista or Yahoo? Obviously, you know the direction I'm going. Of course, it was Google. Yeah. He could have been early, but was it? Real investors and families sharing mistakes they made and where we went wrong. We all have regrets. That's it says something about you to basically lead with that story. That's incredible. And that's great. And sharing the real truth. And I hope many of you appreciate, probably this year more than ever, although I'm doing less interviews, we've had a good number of actual dynastic or entrepreneurial direct family members on sharing this insight, which sometimes is not the easiest thing to get them to do. But thank you, Adam.
I actually do have a postmortem though on that Apple story, because I gave my dad crap about that for years and years and years. And about 10 years ago, I had an educational software company that I was a co-founder of with a guy named Nolan Bushnell. And when I first met Nolan, probably 17 or 18 years ago, I don't know if you know who Nolan is. Nolan was the founder of Atari, founder of Chuck E. Cheese, and among other things, He was Steve Jobs' former boss and mentor.
That's right, at Atari.
So when I first met Nolan about 15 plus years ago, we were talking. I knew he was from the Bay Area. I did not know that Jobs used to work for him. So I was telling him what I thought was my really cool story. And he says to me, that's nothing. He goes, Jobs used to work for me. And when Jobs left Atari to start Apple, he asked me for 50 grand for a third of Apple, and I turned him down. And that story is in the Walter Isaacson book. So as soon as I heard that story, I quickly called my dad to tell him, and he felt so much better. He goes, who am I? I'm a dumb real estate guy. He goes, Nolan Bushnell is brilliant, and he didn't invest in Apple. So anyway, that was sort of the postmortem to the whole Apple story, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, no, in terms of looking back, we all have stories. Just most people don't want to share them. They want to look like everything they touch turns to gold. What do you think most traditional family offices, maybe more so traditional wealthy families, get wrong when it comes to integrating an entrepreneurial spirit into often a legacy family? My perspective is sometimes the rising generation feels, let me not screw it up. This must mean we got lucky the first time. And that creates a mindset that creates fear, that doesn't look for expansion. And inevitably, we know the math behind most families, generation after generation after generation, it inevitably dissipates. We seem to all understand the reasons why, yet it appears to be happening again and again. What are families getting wrong in their internal discussions, education, purpose, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I think that, there is a hesitation about losing. And the problem is when you factor both inflation in and the diffusion that happens when you have a bunch of, people eating at the same pot over generations, if you're not growing things, ultimately there's going to be a lot less left. And, that's particularly true with people that are ultra safe, keeping all their money into very liquid assets, keeping the money in the bank. I know of families that have, put huge amounts of their holdings into cash, and that's just over time. It's the worst thing that you can do. I mean, obviously, there's got to be a buffer just in case a bad time hits. And then, there's the opposite side. There are the people that lose everything because they way over leverage on stuff. So, there's certainly a happy median. One of the things that's sort of great about real estate is it is one of the great inflation protected assets, which is generally speaking, if you're in real estate, even if you're not actively out there doing stuff, you're still going to be growing at a certain amount. One of the things that I sort of changed when I got involved back in the business and my dad wanted me back, I said, look, Dad, I don't want to get back just to manage existing stuff. So we have a lot of shopping centers and land and stuff like that. I said, the only way I want to get back in the business is if I can be proactive, getting us into new markets, which I got us into Utah, and doing active development. So I'm doing land entitlement now in Silicon Valley using something called Builder's Remedy. I have an active project that we're about to hopefully start at the end of summer in Utah, just north of Salt Lake City. I said, look, I think it's really important that we get back into proactively growing.
When you mentioned the opposite side of the coin, you used a word called leverage. Leverage is commonly something that we do see in effectively how your family mainly created their generational wealth in real estate. You also have the impact of monetary policy, of interest rates that in theory, of course, you have no control over. You do have control over the decisions that you make and the leverage that you use. How has your real estate family, you and your relatives, been able to avoid some of the challenges of short-term gyrations and volatility and being over-levered?
Yeah, so, it actually is really, really funny. One of my dad's famous statements is, you can pretty much never lose money in real estate if you have a long-term horizon and you don't over-leverage. Because real estate is one of those assets, unlike tech, And unlike many other assets or the stock market, even that, if you, it's never going to zero. And if you are not over leveraged, you almost cannot lose money. On the other hand, you can certainly make a lot more money in real estate if you have leverage, but there's a lot more risk to it. One guy that my dad knew who owned a lot of real estate up in Silicon Valley, and you think Silicon Valley, how can you lose money there? Well, he owned one of the really massive shopping centers, much bigger than any of our individual family shopping centers. And he borrowed against it hugely to do massive other expansions. And guess what? During one of those cycles where interest rates went really, really, really high, all the other stuff happened, economy dipped, he lost it. He lost the whole thing. And so you got to be really careful. Our family has always been on probably the overly ultra conservative side. So like when COVID hit, it was not a big deal to us because I almost hate to say this. We have right now almost no leverage, which is also not a smart thing either, because you can grow your assets a lot more if you at least have some leverage. So we've been on the overly cautious side, and we're finally starting to do more active real estate development now. But yeah, I mean, there are two sides, and the sweet spot is probably somewhere in the middle.
Adam, the day that we did our Sunday soiree, I got there a couple of hours early. We had a chance really for the first time to catch up in person. I greatly enjoyed it and love hearing, given my interest in legal for some reason, and you being at a very prominent firm and active over the years as an attorney, the fact that AI is rapidly, very rapidly, like we're really talking the last 2 or 3 years, probably mainly the last year, impacting many professions, including legal. If you could talk a little bit about the future of effectively legal firms, I think some of it is obvious. They needed to hire a gazillion talented associates. Some would stay on, some would drop out, some would go elsewhere for the goal of their driving enough revenue to value being a partner. But all those dynamics are being flipped. If you could give us more context.
Yeah, the legal profession is one of those ones I think that's going to change a lot, because if you really look at the way a law firm works, it's a little bit like a pyramid, right? You got a bunch of associates that they're filling out. So it's like this. You got a bunch of associates that they're into filling out. And the associates, even though it seems like they're making a lot of money, maybe 200 grand a year, whatever it is, 250 grand a year. When you look at what they're billing out at, they're billing out $350, $400, $450 an hour. And partners are making a crap load amount of money off of it. The thing that's going on now, though, is with the research tools that are out there, a lot of the legwork that would normally be done by associates, you don't need anymore. It's now you got to be really careful. And there's some high profile cases I'm sure you've heard about with dumb, stupid lawyers who are citing cases that don't exist. And anybody that does that, all I can say is this: I shake my head and go, they're idiots, because there's no reason for that to happen. These research tools are awesome. I usually use several. So I always fact check everything. I always, even after I get research done, you always look at the prime source to make sure that the prime source exists and that it actually says what they say it says. And if you're using multiple different AIs, one of the key terms to always use when you have a legal brief that you've written and you're citing certain cases, first of all, you should read the cases anyway. But secondly, you just use a term like verify. Verify every single source cited in this case, and you use a different AI than the one you originally used. So if you're using 2 or 3 or 4 different AIs, which is what I do, I basically kind of chain link a bunch of different AIs. The chances of you ever having a situation like these high profile cases where you hear them citing cases that don't exist is almost non-existent. But yeah, I mean, on the research I've done, if you just do it once and you don't look at, it hallucinates sometimes. But overall, The tools are amazing. They save so much time. It's unbelievable. And it's ultimately has to affect the business model of these law firms. To be honest with you, I wouldn't want to be coming out of law school. Well, actually, if you're really super smart, what'll happen is the very top people from the very top law firms will still get hired because you still need, I believe, a human insight and a human to ultimately be able to use the tools correctly. But you're not going to need the same amount. And the billing and the way things are billed has got to be differently. It's got to be billed more, I believe, on a project basis. Hey, we're actually going to do this as opposed to a pure hourly basis. And frankly, I only spent less than 3 years at Latham. I hated the concept of billable hours. It's just one of those things. I just hated that concept. And I think the way law firms are going to bill is going to be different, but also the amount of legal jobs out there is going to be a lot less, because these tools are useful for so many different things, for everything from legal research to drafting documents to analyzing documents, and beyond just pure research. One of the things that it's also really, really great at now too is negotiating. For instance, you can come up with a whole negotiating plan based upon, you feed documents in, you create knowledge bases, which is one of the key things that a lot of people probably don't take advantage of as much as they should. Each of these tools, Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT, have their own terms for it. But essentially, you create knowledge bases for different things. And then what I like to do, for example, there's a negotiator who I've personally met a bunch of times. I think he's brilliant. His name is Chris Voss. Wrote a best-selling book called Never Split the Difference. So one of the things that you can do as an example is, hey, this is what the other side wants. This is what we want, blah, 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 blah. And then you do stuff like using the negotiating tactics of Chris Voss. How would you prepare a plan to do X, Y, Z? The other thing I almost always do, I have a custom prompt on Chat GPT that I almost always use, and it's a prompt generator, which is custom done to improve any prompt I actually put into it.
Well, that is going to allow us to dive a little deeper into some of the platforms that are out there and where you think some of them shine in areas more than others. And we'll get to the integration into family offices and investment portfolios shortly. But why don't, since it segues perfectly into that, so off the top of my head, of course, you have OpenAI's ChatGPT, Anthropic's Claude, you have Gemini, you have Mistral, you have Perplexity that you noted, you have, of course, China's DeepSeek, you have Llama. Those are among the 7 more popular. When I talk to people, even those that are older, even older than me, they're all somewhat familiar with OpenAI's ChatGPT. It's a little sad when I talk to someone younger and that's like all they know. Like they better, if they want to be employed and be opportunistic moving forward in the future, they have to know a lot more than that. But if you could break down some of the platforms that I noted, where you think their strengths are and how you use them.
Happy to do that. So from a research point of view, I think Perplexity is great. I have the paid version of it. One of the things I like about it is it's really good at citing sources, and it's a great research tool. They've got a deep research thing on there, and from a basic first place to go to get basic research, I love it. Claude.ai is, from my point of view, the best at writing. I actually like the writing style on it. It now, if you have the paid version only, has full internet access too. Although what a lot of people don't realize is even if you have the paid version, there's a toggle switch under settings that you have to flip. If you don't flip it, I think the cutoff is like November of 2024. So you got to remember, if you have the paid version of Claude and you want it to be able to hit the web too. You want to switch that. You want to flip that switch. But Claude is great. Claude's also great for coding. And another little trick a lot of people don't understand about Claude is they have an artifacts feature. You have to tell it to use artifacts if you want it to do certain things. So as an example, if you're doing a red line on something, it does a terrific job. If you say, using artifacts, any changes that you make, I want you to put in bold, or I want you to highlight in some way, blah, 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 blah. Additionally, Claude is terrific at unstructured data. So if you're putting a bunch of unstructured data in and want it to create graphs, things like that, again, you specifically tell it to use artifacts. I love Claude. I have the paid version of Claude too. I also have the paid version of Chat GPT. So you see where this is going. I mean, at $20 each, I mean, you're crazy to not just get the paid versions. So what a lot of people don't understand about GPT is they just use, the basic model. What they don't understand is you have a choice of a lot of different models on there, and they do different things. From a reasoning point of view, by far the best reasoning model is the O3 model. It's not inherently obvious, but I've done all of the research. I've actually gone and read the white papers. That's the model from a deep research point, from a reasoning point of view that you want to use.
Adam, if you don't mind, if you could define what it's meant by the verbiage reasoning.
Reasoning, what it means is it goes through a series of steps. So rather than just go to the web and get an answer, it'll actually go through a series of reasoning steps. So it gives you something more like, what a human would do in terms of a research project or real type of reasoning. The O4 mini model was the next best model. And again, there are limits, even with the paid version at $20 a month, and even at the $200 a month, although those limits are higher. There are limits on the amount of O3 use that you get. And then they also have a feature called deep research, which you can, for example, use the O3 reasoning model with deep research and get it to do a full report for you. They just literally, I was reading last night. If you go on Chat GPT now and go to other models, which is the last sort of toggle, they just came out with a new model called 4.1. It also does deep reasoning, but it does deep reasoning, but from a prompting point of view, you have to be very different in the way you prompt it. You have to give it the actual specific steps you want it to do. And it apparently is very, very, very powerful. I have not used it yet. I've literally just found out about that. But again, every one of these models, it takes time to understand what they do, how to actually use them. By the way, Chat GPT, from a visual point of view, does some really, really, really cool stuff too. So in terms of creating images, etc. So then there's Notebook LM, which is from Google. It does have internet access now, but one of the great things about Notebook LM is it's also, in some sense, a closed model. It's not going to hallucinate. It's great if you want to put a lot of sources in. I believe on the unpaid version, you can put up to 50 different sources in. It also creates a little podcast if you want. I don't really need that.
Yes.
Yeah, that actually speaks and creates 2 different guests and la da da da. So it's
important to note. It's not using verbatim what it is needing to write. It just does its own thing. It's a little eerie.
It is really eerie, and they have a little feature that will not that new, but you can interrupt it now, and then you can start asking questions. I mean, it's freaky actually. So,
yeah, that's probably the word I was looking for. What do you see in terms of Gemini, Mistral?
Yeah, I was about to get to Gemini. The interesting thing about Gemini, I love Gemini, but you don't get the latest version of it unless you go to Google AI Studios. And then you get some of the preview, like most cutting edge versions of it. So so they have two versions out there that from a reasoning point of view are really, really terrific. They have the 2.5 flash 417 version, which is really good. And you actually you have the ability to set a count on how much reasoning and how much time you actually want it to spend. There's a toggle on there too. But they fairly recently ended up coming out on May 6th with what they call their Pro Preview version. So if you go to Google AI Studios and you go to 2.5 Pro Preview 5.6, it takes up to 2 million tokens. So you can do really long queries on there, like really, 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 really long queries. And it's really good. So I'm very, very impressed with them. And so I recommend it. There's Grok I also use too, yes. Using and that's free, so it's great. They have deep reasoning, but the one you really want to do is deeper reasoning. Again, it's just a little toggle switch down, and that's great. As you can see, what I often do is I'll run the same query among multiple things, or I'll create a knowledge base using several, and then I'll upload those knowledge bases into yet another one, but also say, do your own verification. Don't just rely on the knowledge base, do your own reasoning, blah, blah, blah. And when you do that, and you basically are integrating a bunch of different knowledge bases and a bunch of different reasoning models, that's typically, in my opinion, where you get the best stuff. Sometimes for just really quick ability to look at several different models at the same time, there are a couple of different sources that do it. I use chathub.gg, $20 a month. You can run up to 6 different models simultaneously. It has virtually all the major models. It sometimes doesn't have the very, very, very latest, most expensive version of every single model, but Mistral's on there, Llama's on there. I mean, OpenAI is on there, and Perplexity, and Claude, and I mean, it is kind of cool that you can actually run literally 6 different things on the same query simultaneously. In my opinion, it's great if you're writing a quick letter or an email, and you actually want potentially 6 different versions to look at and see which you like best, and cut and paste different versions of different things. So those are the models I tend to use the most, although as you and I were chatting about, where I think things are getting really exciting are in AI agents. So the 2 that I've used a little bit, I mean, I don't extensively use them probably as much as I should, but Monis and GenSpark are both really, really amazing agents. And that's where I think everything is going. And that, to me, is the thing that's just going to change everything.
Wow. I mean, you give a lot there to chew on. So I was going to get into understanding the nuances of deep reasoning, the value that you get from that. I think, at least for today's purpose, you covered that very well. I'm going to segue a little bit into, I'm very active in the world of AI within the framework of the family office community. I even have on my angelorobles.com a tab dedicated to my upcoming June masterclass, AI Family Office. And I'm living through it, restructuring what I'm doing as a Wyoming-based, quote unquote, single family office, and changing a lot of the fundamentals of it. And this leads effectively into my question. Sadly, and I could even see today, like a lot of family offices are either ignorant to it, literally at the moment as I'm talking, ignorant to it, or they don't maybe want to come out and admit it. And I would understand this one, afraid of it, afraid of that it could do more with less, better and faster. That's one of my catchphrases. And the reality is it's true. It's never going to be weaker than today. And I heard Tom Bilyeu state, which is, this is going to be a scary comment, audience, by the way. Within 15 years, we're going to go to bed one night, sleep for 8 hours, and the advancements that are accruing in the 15 years to come, it's going to be like 1,000 years of technological progress from the time we went to sleep to the time we wake up. Now, we could dig deeper and say, how is that going to end well? I don't know. But this is not going to be the podcast or webcast for that deeper, more philosophical question. But the big picture is, and you may even see this in your family and your portfolio, how are you getting those around you to wake up to the reality of you're better off getting in front of this, you're better off working with this and understanding it, you're putting your head in the sand, you'll probably be okay for 6 months to a year, but then you're really going to be behind the eight ball and it's going to be a problem. What are you doing to, let's go with the word, convince people?
Yeah, that actually is one of those things. I think you're right. I think everybody, and I'm a big evangelist for AI. I just think it's great. I tell everybody about it. I think a lot of people just aren't ready for it. Honestly, I think you're right on in terms of some of the things that you were telling me that you've been working on, which is it isn't just about, for example, what I'm doing here, learning how to use these different tools. Ultimately, where it's going to really go, especially for those families that really need privacy, and you were talking about this, it's the integration of the private servers. Because ultimately, when you're running a family office where there are real secrets, where there are things you absolutely want to keep private, especially in a world where privacy is going to be harder and harder and harder. I think with these open source tools like DeepSeek out there, and there are going to be a lot more of them. These families getting their own private servers. And you were telling me about how you've been using Apple, but there's an NVIDIA version, I think, that's going to be coming out soon. I mean, for these family offices, spending $5,000 or $10,000 on a server, and then another, possibly $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to have somebody integrate everything is nothing. It's absolutely nothing, because you'll be able to run even large family offices with a minimal number of people, because so much of what a family would normally do can actually be automated. And it's just going to change everything. I remember there was a panel I heard at the Uncorrelated conference. One of the guys was a Major League Baseball team owner. I think it was the Brewers.
That was in my session. That was Mark Antanasio, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yes, and he was talking about the fact of how he has a team of analytic people, which I think is smart, extremely smart. Seems like he's very much on the cutting edge. He's not going to need a team of analytic people. He's going to need one or two people and a really smart AI team, because you're not going to need a whole bunch of analytic people to do any of that stuff anymore.
That is just a reality. And I'm glad you said some of this, not me, because I get told I'm wrong, I'm conflicted. And even now, I see people, honestly, Adam, with all due respect to the brilliance of you and I, like dropping off even. Like they just don't want to address these issues. They want me to talk about things that are just so basic and generic that I'm not saying don't have value, but even those in accounting and legal and structuring are all going to be gravely impacted, good and bad, depending on your perspective, in the world of AI. The world of healthcare and medicine will be totally flipped. We'll get to your backyard of Hollywood in a second. The world of
actually, if you don't mind me saying something about healthcare, because healthcare is going to be massively impacted, like massively. And even right now, I have created my own knowledge bases and own AIs personalized to me. So for example, on Claude, and I've done this on multiple, I literally have multiple / nutritionist doctors that know me better than any doctor possibly could fly.
Exactly.
I have uploaded into the knowledge bases, and to be honest with you, if I were to do it properly, I do it on a private server. So this might not be the smartest thing to do, but it's really interesting. So I've uploaded every blood test over the last 10 years, genetic tests, I take about 40 vitamins a day. I'm really into the whole biohacking thing. I also uploaded into the knowledge base those biohackers and doctors who I most follow and respect. I now have my own nutritionist doctor that knows me better than anybody. And so, for example, I have made changes a little bit to some of the vitamins I take based on all of my testing, based on everything I've taken. It's told me, well, you're taking a little bit too much of this. Maybe you might want to take a little bit less of that. And then I can run it by multiple different AIs to actually get multiple, quote, doctor or nutritionist thoughts on it. But there's no doctor out there that would know me better than this, because they have access to my entire genetic testing, every single blood test I've taken, the trends, everything, every vitamin I actually take, and what I actually eat, and who I respect and follow. I mean, so if you think about that, I mean, that's me just kind of coddling together something like this. Imagine where healthcare is going to be in 5 years.
I mean, you're beating a drum that I beat as well. I'm interested in longevity, biotech, and those subjects. Actually, just yesterday, I made a request to Dr. David Sinclair to come on. Early in COVID, a couple of years back, he was on as a guest. So hopefully we'll get him back. And he's an iconic figure in that. And everything you just described. Now, what's going to get better and better relative to genetic testing is understanding the nuances of what's specific to you and coordinating peptides, vitamins, minerals that are going to be very targeted to you. I mean, we could go on and on. They're doing things now, and I want to be a little careful. Some people may be a little offended how I say this, from a combination of stem cell to epigenetics to a variety of different things that are bordering on scary. I mean, they're basically able to scrape your skin cells, recreate, quote unquote, even if you're in your 70s, an egg, and the ability for reproduction of children and everything is going to be radically changing in the next 10 years. From an investor's perspective, just look at the tremendous opportunities that are in front of us yet again. And I know I get killed for this. Many family offices, your head's dust in the sand about this. Oh, we got a little VC money here. We're allocated. We're good. You're really not doing the job. Do the extra work. If nothing else in today's era of AI, besides putting more information at your fingertips, you do got to think for yourself. You do got to move quickly on your feet, and you have to adapt. I usually, and I did this with Michael Saylor, Adam, so you're going to get a Michael Saylor-like question here. Relative to that, in today's world of exponential technologies and AI, putting on your legal, your investor hat, and maybe what you would recommend to a child or grandchild, a young one in their 20s, that is maybe doing something in school that honestly may not correlate to their career in 10 years. How do you teach them to think for themselves and to be adaptive in today's world? They need to know how to pivot.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because what I would say, and it's different than it was 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, what you'd really want to do, for example, if you were in school, learn how to code, learn, one or two things really deep. And
boy, has that changed.
Boy, totally. The most interesting thing right now, I believe, getting out of school is your ability to think. You know what? And by ability to think, analytic ability, creative ability, and also having a very large and expansive knowledge base. So rather than being deep into one thing where you're likely to get, likely to not have it be of any use, domain knowledge is not as important as analytic ability and just your ability to be flexible, adaptive, creative. Those are the, I believe, most important tools going forward. And if I had to choose going forward in the next 5 to 10 years, the 3 technologies that I think are going to transform our society into something that is almost unrecognizable to what we have now. Number 1, AI. Now, everything I'm going to say is going to be interactive with each other. So AI is number 1. You can already see massive changes in the production of goods and services based on AI. Two, a little bit further out, I'm no expert in it, but I'm telling you, when quantum computing becomes super viable, and they're already working on it now, and there's already, small things that they're doing, but quantum computing interacting with AI, the things that you're going to be able to do are going to be amazing. And then the third thing is, what do both AI and quantum need more than anything? Energy.
Power. Yes, energy.
Power. And so the advances in energy are going to be really important. I'm not an expert enough to know whether it's going to be fusion energy. If that's true, that'll be an almost unlimited source of energy. But if not, fission energy, technologies, and other energy technologies, because every one of these things is power hungry.
I mean, and I'm going back to this again, being hated. Like, I don't see how, as an investor family office, you don't see that AI, again, like Andreessen said about software 12, 13 years ago, it's eating the world. The advancements in robotics, people like Elon stating you'll be way bigger than the auto industry and robotics, which will make it effectively the biggest industry ever. The impact on healthcare that Adam mentioned earlier, and what's going to be needed is going to be things like critical metals that are going to be important for this, and energy. Yes, there will be a point of fusion. Maybe that's, I don't know, 13, 20, 29 years away. That will change some of those dynamics. But leading into that, this is just so obvious. Yet many of you are not being as tactical as, per my perspective, and at least what I share with my members, that I think they would get value at. Adam, a question, and this goes back maybe to your legal background as well. What legal frameworks do you foresee emerging around AI-generated, we could get a little deep on this one. Let's not make it too boring, though, intellectual property? And maybe this relates to open and closed platforms in AI, which I'll get to from a family office perspective shortly. But I want to look at the legal, ethical, and kind of societal perspective of who owns what relative to utilizing AI within an investor or family office framework.
Boy, we could probably talk an hour or 2 hours or 10 hours on that subject, because it's so deep. But if I'm just going to give the general overview, there's so many different questions. I mean, the one that we hear about almost every day are the training models, right? So why are these models so smart? Well, they're training on massive amounts of data. Do they legally have the right to train on that data? Well, I don't know. I mean, that's something that's being litigated right now by some of the best lawyers in the country. So that is one issue. Then there's the issue of, well, if you create something and AI helps you create it, who owns the copyright on that? If it's a trademark issue, if you're creating a trademark, who owns the trademark? If you're creating a patent, who owns the patent? If it's 100% created by AI, are you able to do trademarks, patents, copyrights? If it's 50% created, are you able to do it? Those are questions that are, that we don't have definitive answers on yet. It's seeming like if there's a human involvement, even if it's AI enhanced, you probably can get some of those things. If it's 100% created by AI, maybe not. But then again, well, if you were involved in the prompting of the AI, and it was the prompt that really created it, and that was the key insight. These are really, really challenging questions. And to be a lawyer coming up right now, kind of interesting, because they're, from an intellectual property lawyer point of view, there are some really, truly interesting issues coming up.
Indeed. And is there a point where AI-driven optimization becomes, could I even say, detrimental to a family office's long-term cultural family cohesion? And how do you balance the efficiency of AI and talents, for lack of a better word, with maintaining human connection?
Boy, Those are really tough questions. And they lead into even larger questions about work generally. At almost every point in human history, people have had this attitude that, technological enhancements are going to get rid of work. And so far, it's changed where work is going, but ultimately it's created new jobs. So if you look at the Industrial Revolution, you had people talking about, well, what are people going to do, blah, 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 because all this work, then throughout the course of history, we have had a bunch of points where you think jobs are going to be lost, and ultimately what happens is new jobs are created. With AI, I don't know, because for the very first time, you have a situation where, these AIs are able to not only think, but even do physically with robots and some of these other things, some very basic tasks. And so it's a dynamic that goes beyond just family offices. It's, from a work point of view, what's going to happen. And you had even talked earlier about the entertainment industry. I mean, there's going to be massive changes. And it's already happening in the entertainment industry too. It's a really interesting question, and I don't know what the answer is, and it's hard to know exactly where everything is going. So I don't know.
I mean, that's the most honest answer. None of us know. We hear people prognosticate about the future. Maybe it's a dartboard. Part of it could be right. All of it could be right. But to assume that we're going to adapt as Homo sapiens and have employment in and around AI moving forward in 10, 15 years with the advent of robotics as well, that may end up being a little bit of wishful thinking. But the reality is we shall see. It's an unusual time playing out. Who said 10 years of progress is going to feel like 100 years? Definitely accurate. That will be the case. I did promise I would come back to a little bit of what you and I caught up on, and you referenced even before me, relative to the AI family office and sharing some of the insights of what I do, which, by the way, 99.999% of family offices they're just not going to act on it. We'll see. They're going to see that I'm right and they were wrong, like I was right about Bitcoin 10 years ago. They're going to see that play out, not in 10 years from now, within 1 year, a year and a half, 2 years. I say there's massive advantages to being an early adapter and getting on early, partially for the reasons that you said. It's really not that time consuming or expensive. So, correct. You should be ordering, in my opinion, one of the three manufacturers, Dell being one, that is implementing the NVIDIA DGX Spark. For a couple of $1,000s, you're going to have your own true AI supercomputer. Is the interface going to be a little complex? It might be. But again, is it worth the effort and the experience and integrating it? Yes. A lighter version of that is getting a maxed out Apple MacBook Pro 16-inch, get 128 gigabytes. And then you heard Adam talk a little bit. We don't want to get overly technical here, but about open source platforms that using Olama on such a computer, you could download probably 3 of them, and you're not training the system to get better on your proprietary data, making it better for everyone. You're even keeping it on the computer, not in the cloud, where it is subject, I don't care what the contracts say, to some level of a little bit of spying, hacking. Things could go wrong. Not to say that it can't go wrong on your laptop either, but you want to bring that internal. What you then want to do is you want to integrate AI agents, which we're not going to do a deep dive today, but coming this early summer, we'll have one of the AI agent experts come on. There's easy to use off the shelf platforms with a little customization, and some you can build somewhat from scratch with your own, which I'll talk about in my masterclass, AI integration engineer and machine learner, and not as complicated as it sounds. Now, you're then also able to use Microsoft AutoGen, Google's ADK, have the agents sync and work together, and 24/7 have an autonomous workforce that is getting better and better, again, 24/7, every second. We're not rolling backwards here. Then you integrate with other technologies, like I subscribe to Crunchbase and others. You have API connections, and your AI and AI agents is coordinating around the parameters that you're setting, from geopolitics to macro to investing to even things that are a little more personal, like your workflows, your architecture of your family office. I mean, I kind of gave you the 70% of the rough blueprint there. A little bit of the art is putting it together, which on June 23rd and 24th in person in New York, go to my website, angelorobles.com, and go to the AI Masterclass. I have a whole write-up about it. And then it's an opportunity to jump in. Is it cheap? No. I'm giving proprietary knowledge that is going to give you a massive edge. And I did a more of a private webcast about this yesterday. Stop overthinking about it, leap forward and be a part of it, and get a massive edge. Whether you're a family member, a rising generational family member, which you'll get it even more, working in a family office and kind of want to assure, at least for a couple of more years, incredible employment, or servicing the community. All these things, I'm not talking 3 years from now. All these things are working and ready right now. And they're getting better every second, every day, every month. Like, you don't want to fall behind. And sadly, unfortunately, and who else in the family office world is talking about this? You get a little bit of yap around the periphery. I'm living through it and doing it. And just jump on board, be a part of it. Because you are in LA, Adam, and it was great to be there and meet so many incredible people. Let's dive a little bit into where you left off at a little bit, where, like you said, I wanted to bring up the world of Hollywood. Effectively, what, about a year and a quarter ago was, in uproar with the SAG and the strikes and all that. And I get it. I understand it. But that's not going to stop the inevitable march of progress. And someone like me, it's a little early now, although I could kind of do it. But imagine a year from now, I use AI. It helps to bring my storyboard in my head to life. I then create actor and actresses the way I want them to look and talk and accents. I create backgrounds, and I'm effectively able to recreate Hollywood. And maybe I feel that Hollywood is limiting, that it's biased against one side. I'm able to share my vision and my voice and my creations. Oh, but you don't have a distribution network. Well, it depends. Do you think that Charlie on TikTok and all these influencers with millions and millions of followers, they do not have a built-in audience? You're crazy.
Well,
There's
I'll also
add.
the biggest network in the world is YouTube. And people are accessing YouTube now. A lot of people from their television sets. It's not just from the computers. And the biggest YouTube creators make way more than the biggest creators of movies and television. So, yes, you're absolutely right. If you create something that's super impressive, you don't have that gatekeeper anymore. You can go right to the audience via YouTube. Or if it's for short form content, you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, you have other stuff. But for longer form content, there's a lot of great longer form content on YouTube.
100%. It's so obvious that the world of media and Hollywood is already starting to get upended, and that's going to accelerate. We mentioned healthcare. We mentioned maybe analytical in the world of finance and how Wall Street's changing. Everything is changing. And I'm not saying this is all good. I'm not saying that there's not major risk, that I'm not afraid, that I don't look at even my son who's 21 and wonder of some of the challenges that lie ahead. So don't think that I'm ignorant to that or insensitive to those issues. And I'm not so sure that, depending on my pivoting and adaptability in 2 or 3 years, am I going to be the source on single family office proprietary content? Maybe the one thing that we do have as humans is interconnectivity and getting together. And maybe that being a part of a community that's authentic, that's imperfect, that isn't AI, is a little bit of the direction to go. But more on that to follow. Adam, in taking it a little bit to the home stretch here, and these are probably 2 questions I'm going to tackle in person in my masterclass, and they're maybe a little off the beaten path for you, but again, you pivot and you're a creative thinker. How do you think family offices could use AI modeling even potentially black swan events that are inherently unpredictable, what metrics can be prioritized to gauge model accuracy? Could I use AI and AI agents to have full access to X, to Reddit, and see what's being written, what's being spoken about, and maybe even gain momentum on things like stocks and others that a lot of it is emotional, illogical?
Yeah.
Don't you think that AI is going to play into a lot of this moving forward now and more so in the future?
Well, Elon Musk is a very smart guy. And I can tell you that's what was behind the merger um, between X and his XAI stuff. Because what he realized is that, it is that part of it is about understanding sentiment, and where is a lot of sentiment in X. And so that's why he's keeping that. If you're on Grok, that's one of the few places where you can actually, see that. And so you're absolutely right. The stock market, a lot of other stuff is not necessarily based on logic. It's based on sentiment. And I think that was what was behind, I think Elon Musk was playing a couple steps ahead of everybody else in terms of why he really wanted X. And I think ultimately that's what he knew about AI, because he was one of the original people with OpenAI way back when. And I think he realized what the real value of X was.
And it's kind of a related question. You don't think that currently AI and AI agents can truly quantify, to a degree, geopolitical risk and uncertainty that informs asset allocation with family offices?
Oh yeah, no, it's absolutely. I think even with the tools out there now, there are some very, very smart people who are utilizing AI tools to do exactly that.
I know. Getting through to these family offices because they think that this is 10 years out. It's right now. And by the end of this year, we're really, really going to be in the midst of it. Adam, maybe.
By the way, I'll also add, if you know how to use these AI tools, you can do so much more than hiring one of these consulting firms to give a analysis of something. Honestly, even these big firms, they are not going to need the huge number of MBA grads and everybody else that they're getting. They're going to need a very small number of people who are super good at using tools that'll use the AI tools to basically do all the work.
Adam, you mentioned a little before, I mentioned a little before, and really the glue to even what I'm doing in the masterclass and really the art and science is going to be around the AI agents. I will do programming in the summer, probably one or two that will be an hour long with an expert. But given that you've experimented with some platforms that are, I'm assuming, relatively cheap, that you were able to integrate, if you could talk a little bit about your experience and maybe more so how you see an investor or family office utilizing maybe the two questions that I just had relative to, leveraging what's out there in Reddit and X and platforms, gaining momentum, seeing where there's geopolitical uncertainty. How would you utilize some of these agents?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I've relatively recently kind of gotten from just using Perplexity and Grok and ChatHub and all those to using agents. But I think there's a lot of ways of doing that, and you just have to figure out. Every family office is different in terms of what they're doing. In the real estate world, macro events matter, obviously, but real estate's obviously very local too. And so I actually have used a lot of these agents, especially from a valuation point of view. We're looking at an acquisition or a sale or something like that to go out and do stuff, frankly, way better than any broker could ever possibly do, but simultaneously do it in the context of broader macro events too. So you can have these agents, and that's the great thing about agents, is they can do a bunch of different tasks and then integrate everything. And so I'm starting to use agents more and more and more. And I think what you're doing, Angelo, is super smart, which is actually getting these family offices to think about getting somebody who understands this stuff to set up agents for them, because every family office is going to be a little bit different in terms of what's important to them. I mean, if you're a metals trader, it's going to be different than if you're in real estate, then different if you're doing allocations in the stock market. But I think virtually every family office should really be proactive looking at how they can integrate AI, whether it's just using some of the basic stuff to analyze markets, to doing the more sophisticated agents. But I think pretty much every family office out there should be doing it, and you can integrate it into so much stuff.
Indeed. And Adam, I know you're really mainly doing this a little bit as a favor to me and sharing your insight with the audience. But perhaps you have something that you're doing where you're advising or working potentially with real estate investors and families or family offices. Is there a way that people could learn a little bit about what you're doing, follow you on social media? Is there an email for people to reach out, or you're all good?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to reach out to me, the easiest way to do that is probably my LinkedIn, and it's just Adam and then last name Berns, Berns. There shouldn't be too many with the Berns.
Yes.
And then my email is just adam.berns@gmail.com. Honestly, we don't, our family, as far as our real estate projects, is relatively close. We have a couple outside investors in a few things we do, but I'm, always interested in chatting people. I'm more than happy to share any knowledge I have or any insights. We do real estate, even though I live in LA, our real estate is mostly either Silicon Valley. I've been very active in something called Builder's Remedy under SB 330, which is a land entitlement play. And then I love Utah. And so we're building 299 multifamily units and 22,000 square feet of retail, fully entitled, plan check, everything. We have all the money set, and we're ready to probably roll at the end of summer. And then we're looking at some other potential acquisitions out there too. So, but our core stuff, frankly, has just been running our shopping centers and land that we own. But happy to chat about this stuff. I also love tech too, and occasionally I get involved in some tech and media ventures. I've got a brother who's very active actually in the cyber world, and so he packages and is very into like government type stuff, some major defense and cyber stuff. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. And then I also dabble around a little bit for fun in the entertainment space. I've actually produced a couple movies in the past, and have some TV shows I'm working on now too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, Adam. I'm so glad that our mutual friend Nathan had a chance to introduce us. You were a gracious host at your home. I am sure to be back to LA several times a year. One, look forward to seeing you, and maybe around next year doing another little fun soiree. Lots of ideas I have in my head. You're definitely a resource to me, and you helped me understand other AIs and how you use them that were a great advantage to me. And I appreciate you and look forward to learning from you again in the future. In my close, everyone, I hope you enjoyed Adam today as a unique, dynastic, generational family member, an allocator, investor, an entrepreneur, active in real estate and other interests as well. And from someone who, again, he goes back to 75 with understanding Apple and technology, and his utilization now in AI is just truly amazing. And some of his insight about how it's going to be impactful to really everything. It's going to be the control layer for everything, whether I like it, you like it or not. It's just a reality. You could argue my timeline. At worst, maybe I'm a little off, but this is going to be accurate in terms of what I'm talking about. If you're an allocator, if you're an investor, if you're a family office, all things that I am, that I'm going through, that I'm restructuring, I just don't see how you could ignore this. One, there's incredible investment opportunity, including some of the sectors around it in critical metals, energy, healthcare, et cetera, things that I noted. But obviously in AI and robotics, doesn't mean it's not volatile. Doesn't mean some private deals that we think are awesome are going to go to nothing. Like, who knows? But to ignore this as an asset class, but even deeper, that's secondary to me. the advent of the AI family office that I'm at the forefront on and living through it. And again, go to angelorobles.com. One, you should join and be a member. Like, why are you hesitating? It's an incredible group of marching to 100 incredible families, coupled with the fact of what I'm hosting in New York in person, June 23rd and 24th. Also on the website, angelorobles.com. Go to my tab that will say AI family office. And I share a pretty lot in that write-up. But again, it's a lot of art. And the AI agents part you're going to need some hand-holding and bringing in some of the right machine learners and thought leaders, not only at my program, but likely after the fact as well in implementing. There is a little bit of a joke, and I experienced this myself, that people that I know in that community, Angelo, for a lot of you to kind of get started, have me and a buddy, long 3-day weekend, give us Kittles and caffeine. You'll be shocked at what we could do within your investment apparatus and family office. That doesn't mean it's not going to need more work. Doesn't mean it's not going to need machine learning. It's going to take weeks and weeks to really play out. But you do not need to onboard full time necessarily the kind of people that I'm talking about and spend whatever upper hundreds of thousands or millions. Like, I met someone actually yesterday in Utah. So we met digitally. Incredible. A data scientist and an attorney at heart. This man's incredible. And what he's building in terms of AI agents and integration for probably about mid 5 figures, like, it's a no-brainer. Families, family offices, executives, you've got to just wake up. You have to move forward. Now is absolutely the time. No, we're not too early. Go to angelorobles.com and learn more. And any of you could text me anytime. I only have one phone for now. It's right here, actually. 203-570-2898. Adam, you've been a great guest. I appreciate you. Look forward to seeing you soon. I hope to have a couple of days in Greater Beverly Hills this summer. So hopefully in a couple of months.
Let me know when you're here. That's great.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Cheers. All right.